Fellow Conquerors, this is everything you need to mod the main campaign of Medieval 2 Total War on any Android version, any game version, with no DLC required and no unwanted bloat. You can get balance pikes that will stop heavy cavalry in its tracks and yet be vulnerable to shock infantry, all without the janky cohesion mechanics forced upon us by version 1.5 of the game. Advanced knights can be given a proper advantage against their feudal counterparts, and late units such as handgunners can be made to stand toe-to-toe with proper elite infantry. Musketry can be made to use its more efficient firing animation, even while holding ground, and we can also give stakes or special formations to any units we choose. Let's now go through the process for any modding of the base files of the game, along with the tools needed, what is possible, and the limitations we'll meet. Everything we discuss here will be shown in more depth later on, and you can skip between sections using the bookmarks. So, let's dive in. First, we need to make sure we have access to our Android folders, which are read-only in most modern Android builds. If you're on an old build, a Chromebook, a rooted device, or a Galaxy device, you may already have the required access, but most will require two things. Shizuku, a tool to provide root access to files, and a robust file manager such as Z-Archiver or a similar tool. There's already plenty of quality documentation on how to set up Shizuku, so I won't be going into this step in detail, but a link to the relevant information is in the description. Alternatively, you can manipulate your files using a USB connection to a PC if you'd rather. Next, we're going to move the game's data files from the OBB folder to the DCIM folder, since this is the only Android folder that the Hex Editor will be able to access. If you're on Chrome OS, you can put these files anywhere outside of the Play Files directory, such as My Files. At the same time, make a second copy of the OBB files in the Downloads folder. This will come in handy for the next step, which is to unpack the .obb files to get to the raw data. This requires the use of pydroid 3 or the Python runtime app of your choice, and a pair of scripts from the amazing porting toolkit hosted by legendary modder Gigantus. Both are linked below. Unfortunately, it is currently not possible to repack these files into .obb format, so the only reason to unpack them is to have a robust reference point for all the files while using the Hex Editor, and to be able to explore possibilities that I won't be covering. If you only want to follow my specific tutorials on an amazing Vanilla Plus experience, the only files you'll need access to are called export_desker_unit.txt and export_desker_building.txt, which are linked below. Now the real work begins with the Hex Editor. This is where you'll edit all of the game configuration files in the original packed OBBs that you stored in the DCIM folder. I usually try not to recommend specific software unless it's open source, but in this case I have to insist on the Hex Editor Binary Viewer app by publisher K3X1N on the Play Store. It is by far the most reliable editor available on Android and has key features common to PC editors that I haven't seen in any other app. More about the editor is coming up, but if you want to use a different one, it really needs to have a no overwrite feature to make it easier to maintain a safe working copy of the game data and avoid needing to keep up with complicated backups. A changelog of all edits made during a session to double check all of our work before export, string aka UTF-8 search to avoid needing hexadecimal fluency, and a UTF-8 inspector or translator to keep us from going absolutely insane, as you'll see later. Of course, stability is also needed, as I've lost hours of work with some of the other editors out there. And finally, after making edits to the OBB, we export the changes and place the files back into the Android/OBB folder, and we're ready to test. So let's take a closer look at the file structure that we're dealing with. This is probably nothing new, but I'm going to go over it anyway just to make sure that the whole process is foolproof. So we'll go to Play Files. It's your main Android folder. This is a Chromebook, so I have additional options up here, but everything will work no matter what Android you're on. We'll go to the Android folder, and it has data in OBB, so the data folder is going to have a lot of things like our graphics configuration, as well as the files that you'll need to modify if you're getting hit with a forced update to 1.5. The OBB folder is going to be where all our main data is. So it's going to be in these two files, main.blah patch.blah. That number is going to be the build number for your specific game version, but it could vary depending on what version you're using. So we're going to select these two files. We're going to go ahead and cut them. I cut them instead of copy because we're going to have our backups in the downloads folder and our working copy in the DCIM folder. So we don't necessarily need extra backups. So we're going to cut them and place them into the DCIM folder, which I have already done. And then we will also go back up to the downloads and we'll copy them into that folder as well. Now we're using the downloads folder for this because it has the most open permissions of any folders on the Android system, and the pydroid scripts will need that permission in order to be able to read the files. Now if you want to go ahead and unpack all the game files so that you can explore them more easily, assuming that you downloaded pydroid 3 as well as the 2 scripts that I provided in the description, we're going to go ahead and open those scripts. Go to internal storage, download, OBB unpacker, and you'll see the 2 scripts, the OBB parser and the OBB unpacker. We're going to go ahead and open both of these. By opening the second one, it'll save it in a second tab. We'll need both of those in order to get the files unpacked. So this is the unpacker. We need to run the parser before the unpacker, so we'll go over to that one and take a look at the text. Now the only thing that we need to modify here is in the settings. So it shows the directory, that's the file path where you have your OBBs stored, and then the actual names of the files themselves, which is going to have your build number. So I have it in emulated/0/download. So that's where we'll go. It's probably where it'll be for you as well, but it may be different. And then we'll add our build number and then the rest of the name of the file itself. Pharaoh Interactive Medieval 2 _Android.obb. We'll do the same for the patch as well. Now that that's done, all we have to do is go ahead and press the little yellow play button and the script will run. And it'll take some time, and you may not actually get it to stay up on this screen after the parser script has run, but that's okay. Just let it do its thing here. And when pydroid returns to the parser screen and it is all finished, we'll go back over to the unpacker and we'll edit all of these file names and the directory just like we did for the parser, and we'll run that as well. If you accurately entered your file names and directories, then after just a moment the log at the top will show that it has found the main and patch OBB files. Then it'll transition into this screen where it's actually parsing through and copying each and every data file that's present in the OBB. Just be patient here, I've seen this take an hour, but when it's finished you can go to your downloads file folder and you will see a folder called output. Inside you'll see a data folder, and this contains pretty much all of what you would find in the program files of the PC version of the game. All the assets and packs are at the top in folders, and then toward the bottom we get all the text. So we're going to search for export_desker_unit.txt for our first file that we're going to use to make our mods. And we're going to go ahead and just copy that somewhere into the desktop or downloads where it's easy to access. Back to output data, and this time we will search for desker_building. We'll take the export desker_buildings.txt and we'll put that over in our file as well. For whatever reason, the unpacker always fails to get a file called desker_strat, which is a very important file. It allows us to modify the actual campaign conditions, including time per turn and such. And again, it never works with the unpacker. So luckily, it's a very simple file, and it'll be pretty easy to walk through what we need to change on that without having a copy of the file in front of us. Moving on to the Hex Editor. In this section, we're going to take a quick look at the software and learn how to apply one of the easiest and most helpful modifications, which is the removal of the marching fire animation from the Gunpowder units. Just do yourselves a favor here and use the recommended app, because every other one I tried struggled to load and save the large files that we're dealing with, and none of them had the inspection feature, which you'll soon see can remove a lot of the headache from this process. So just popping Hex Editor into the search bar in the Play Store, we can find this one. It's got pink letters. It's called Hex Editor Binary Viewer by K3X1N. We're going to go ahead and open that up. We hit the first option here, and to implement any unit modifications, including the Gunpowder unit fix, we need to access the Export Desker Unit text file. Not the one that we've unpacked earlier, but the one that's inside the DCIM folder within the main OBB file rather than the patch. So we're going to go ahead and open that one up. Side note, the one thing I kind of hate about the Hex Editor I'm showing you is that it actually has a lot of pop-up ads. But as soon as the OBB file is finished loading, I'm going to click on the Remove Ads button, and it'll play about a minute video and get rid of those pop-ups for the rest of the session. If any of you have an ad blocker that works with this app, let me know in the comments. Okay, it's loaded and the ads are squashed, so let's take a look at the first tab here labeled UTF-8. This is the name for your bog standard human use characters, so anytime we make edits or search anything, we need to make sure to be in UTF-8 mode. Below, the app is compiling a readable list of everything in the OBB file, which for more in-depth modding we can use to figure out which files are in the main OBB and which are in the patch. On the wall of unintelligible characters at the top is the actual hexadecimal code. It contains all the hundreds of files compiled in the OBB, but we can make it a lot easier to understand using the Inspector tab. But before we move on, I want to remind you that making any unintended edits or editing the wrong values in any of this hexadecimal data will totally corrupt your game data. So make sure that you double check your work before exporting, and always keep a completely original unmodded backup. Now the first bit of code up here is all metadata, so I'm going to scroll down past all the zeros until we get to some solid numbers, some solid data. And if you take a look at all the little text boxes at the bottom, you can find a box labeled UTF-8. Now if we click on any of the values up here in the hex code, such as 2F, it'll show that that represents a /. If we expand the selection, we can actually translate up to 64 values at a time, and by the way, each 2-character value in the hex code represents a single keystroke. This feature is going to really be your best friend if you're doing the extensive work on these files. I'll put this to the side now and open up the unpacked version of the Export Desker Unit text file. I'm going to move through this pretty quickly and jump right into modding the musket firing animations, but my next video is going to be a really deep dive that covers all the possibilities for this file, as well as the others I mentioned earlier, including pike and two-handed fixes and campaign modifications. And I do highly recommend that you keep a copy of whichever file you're editing open, and always work from the top down. This top section is essentially an appendix for some of the possible values for each unit trait defined in this file, and the first actual unit is defined in lines 140 through 171. You can see it's the Baglaw ship. The first Gunpowder infantry unit that's in this file is the Cossack Musketeers. So we're going to go ahead to the search bar and search Musketeer. Now here we see info about their formation, weapons, armor, health, everything else, but we're going to focus on the attributes line for now. The thing that actually makes the gunners do their little dance is this entry here, fire by rank. On PC we could delete the entire value, but here our OBB file has to retain the exact number of bytes it started with, so we can't delete anything. However, simply changing a single character will cause the game to ignore that value completely. To do that, we go to the Find tab on our Hex Editor and hit the blue text to bring up the string search. Select UTF-8 encoding and type fire by rank, exactly as seen in the text file, and hit jump to first. This will take time since it scans line by line, so have some patience. When the search gets a match, the values will be highlighted as such. Sometimes the term you're searching for is going to be referenced in more than one file, so you can use the inspector to look around the area and make sure you're in the right place, which we are. Back to the string we searched, we can pick any value. I'll do the 66 or the F, and I'll hit edit, making certain to select UTF-8 encoding and entering a new value, like Q. As soon as you make your first edit, you'll see this red dot appear on the Edit tab. This tab is the changelog and is an extremely useful feature. Its 71 represents the Q that we edited in a moment ago, and if we ever scroll and lose our place, we can use this log to jump right back to where we were working by clicking the little blue arrow. You'll also see that the value we changed is highlighted, and if it was screwed up, it can easily be reverted back to the original with the little red trash button, but of course we want to keep this edit. There are 7 units in the game with this attribute, so we've got 6 more edits to go. Back to the Find tab, make sure the no bubble is selected and the correct string is still entered, and then select Find Next Item. It's quick since we're already in the neighborhood, and this is why I say to always work from the top down if you're editing all the units or whatever else. And this process is exactly the same for all 7 of the Gunpowder edits. Using this knowledge, you can certainly get into other edits as well. For example, extra spaces between headers and lists in this export Desker units file can be eliminated to gain room to add attributes like stakes, or even formations from Rome Total War like Shield Wall and Testudo. Again, my next video is going to get into this and so much more in detail, and also include a suite of tweaks to elevate the Grand Campaign to what it was always meant to be. For now though, we've eliminated the dancing muskets and it's time to go enjoy them. Before exporting the file, always go back to the Edits tab and scroll through the changelog, making sure each value is what it should be, in this case Q or 71. And once you're satisfied that everything is right, hit the save button, which will automatically default to a directory other than the working directory. In this way, if your edited file causes any crashes, you can still grab the original file from DCIM. Once you've thoroughly tested your edits and want to make more, you then replace the working copy in DCIM with the tested and edited copy. So we're going to move the edited main OBB file from wherever you output it into the Android OBB folder, and since we didn't yet generate a modded patch OBB file, also copy the one from DCIM back into the Android OBB folder as well. Then launch the game and enjoy the sights and sounds of well-disciplined black powder functioning as it should. If you appreciate this, make sure to like and subscribe, and stay tuned for part 2 when we'll fix the pikes, two-handers, and time per turn. Cheers, and we'll see you next time.
Mod the Grand Campaign, even though we're on our fucking phones. They don't want you to mod the Grand Campaign, but we're gonna do it on our fucking phones.